Marzoff with Culture Engineered, and I'm here with your weekly update. This month we're talking about compensation, answering some of the most commonly asked questions we get around compensation. And this week we're talking with you about the very popular question, how do we determine whether or not someone should be an employee or an independent contractor? So let's get started. So it really comes down to money when you're discussing this, and why oftentimes companies are wanting to classify individuals as independent contractors rather than employees. There are certain costs associated with taking someone on as an employee versus an independent contractor. Mainly, you're paying FICA and unemployment insurance on that employee. You're also administering their pay through a payroll service or system, withholding taxes. This makes it a little tricky. So knowing this, the IRS has put out some guidance to help employers decide how to properly classify their workers. It's still kind of tricky, but it comes down to three things. It comes down to the behavioral control, financial control, and also just the nature of the relationship itself. So when we talk about behavioral control, for an employee, they're really looking at the company controls how and when the worker does the job. So they probably have a set schedule, they manage their performance, so that can be an appraisal process or disciplinary action, reviewing them, training them, providing tools for them. This suggests more of an employee-employer relationship. If the worker instead is an independent contractor, that person instead wouldn't often require training. They would control their own schedule for the most part. So that's easier described if we look at it as when you order something. If you have you order someone to fix your computer. You don't really dictate when they fix your computer. They do, however, commit to when it'll be finished. That would be resemble more the independent contractor relationship. So again, it's not so much dictating the nitty-gritty details of the job itself and how it's done, just that it's done to meet certain expectations. The financial control then is more about either the worker or the company, who assumes the risk of a loss financially on that work, and who stands to gain profit from that work if it's done well. So if it's more of an employee versus an independent contractor, an employee, the company stands to gain and lose depending on how well or poor the work is done. If it's an independent contractor, then obviously the individual stands to gain or lose, because the independent contractor will typically control his or her expenses, the labor that they're putting into it, the time frame that the work is done. So you want to consider things like who pays for the expenses, who provides the tools, who are they billing? So is the person submitting an invoice on an ongoing basis, or is it just an auto pay or salary throughout the duration of the project or work? These are things you'd want to consider under the financial condition of the three that were laid out by the IRS. And then the third and final condition that they lay out is the nature of the relationship. So again, if it is an employee versus an independent contractor, the employee would tend to see the company as their employer. Maybe you give them an offer letter rather than an independent contractor contract. Maybe you have them fill out tax forms, which of course only employees are you withholding taxes, not independent contractors. An employee would expect benefits or perks associated with the job, whereas typically that's not something extended to independent contractors. So these are things you'd want to consider on this third condition of determining how to classify a worker. So consequences, unfortunately, to misclassifying are significant. One of the reasons is You have two very monetary focused groups looking at this issue, and they partner together quite a bit on misclassifications in the workplace. That is your IRS, of course, because you're not withholding taxes, and then Department of Labor, because in misclassifying someone, you're not allowing them the certain protections that come with the status of employment. So that can be, the Fair Labor Standards Act that is overseen by the Wage and Hour Division of the Department of Labor, meaning you have to pay them overtime for anything if you're going by federal regulations, any time worked over 40 hours in a work week, or that would also prevent them, maybe they should have been eligible for various employee leaves available through your organization or required by law. Maybe they're eligible for medical benefits, dental benefits. It really goes on and on from there. And then also, as we mentioned, the IRS is going to care. And this is where some heavy-hitting monetary penalties can apply. So just to give you some ideas, it really will depend on whether the IRS feels that your misclassification of one or more individuals in your workplace is intentional or not intentional. So if they're intentional, they feel they're intentional, you can expect much, much higher penalties. However, if it's maybe the more minimal side, it's still not so minimal. You can expect $50 per unfiled W-2. So again, because you're not considering them an employee, you're not generating W-2s for them. 1.5% of unpaid wages and 40% of FICA not withheld from the employee's pay, you will be responsible for, and all FICA that you should have paid. So again, that's the Social Security and Medicare. And then also 0.5% penalty failure to pay taxes for each month not paid, up to 25% of the total tax liability. So again, depending on how long the person's worked for you, and then how many people this impacts, because again, the Department of Labor will likely just come in and audit your files if they were to get a complaint or have reason to believe you have misclassifications in your workplace. They would then take a look at all of your misclassified employees and apply penalties there. And then the third and final thing, so we talked about IRS consequences, Department of Labor, how they view it as far as failing to, offer certain protections under the status of employment, and then really legal implications around safety issues. So if someone is worked or if someone is hurt at your workplace performing functions of their job, typically your workers' compensation would pick it up, your workers' compensation insurance. If someone, however, is not a worker, this gets dicey. It's very possible that you could be legally responsible for what injuries, lawsuits occur from any type of misclassification issues. So that can be them hurting someone else or them hurting themselves. So this is often where you'll see these claims start. Someone gets hurt, they can't pay the bills and support their family, they find an attorney realizes that they were misclassified. Also, maybe you can't afford to pay on the contract anymore. When the economy dipped, this happened quite a bit. They go to collect unemployment and find out then that they aren't eligible for unemployment because you didn't have them classified as an employee. It's typically these times that you'll see claims kind of start, because this is when someone is without money, needs money, and then learn that they should have had some safeties in place had they been properly classified. So good news is we have a tool available for you. You can download it using the link within the comments section. So this will help walk you through the process. It gives you a good way to quickly identify who should and should not be classified as an independent contractor. Otherwise, if you need more help, please don't hesitate to reach out to Culture Engineered. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week when we talk about exempt versus non-exempt employees and really talking about salary and hourly implications. Thanks so much.